Welcome to The Sideshow. All right, welcome to The Sideshow. Mark is going to be kicking off this episode. So, Mark, why don't you tell everyone what we're going to be talking about today?
Thanks, Mike. Today we're going to go back to the days of listening to ads for the Exclusive Company in Oshkosh. And one of the albums that they used to talk about quite a bit was The Cars and their debut album, The Cars, which really it hit the airwaves, certainly in the Midwest, and took, really became popular very quickly. But the Cars had actually been growing in popularity, especially in New England, for some time. But when they came out with this debut album, I mean, it really racked up a couple of hits very quickly that are still continued to be seen as big, classic rock hits to this day. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today.
I can still remember the commercials on WAPL with Mr. Gianvetti.
Yes,
from the Exclusive Company.
Yes. Say it with me, The Cars.
But actually, I actually met him one time at one of the, because there was originally the Exclusive Company was in Oshkosh. Then there was one in Green Bay. I don't know if there was ever one in Appleton. But there's one in Madison, as I recall, and at one of those I was there. I think we went to the Exclusive Company in Green Bay before a Molly Hatchet concert when we were in high school, and to get our albums signed because the band was there before the concert, and maybe it was then. I don't know. I think Tom ended up with my copy of that debut album through some transaction that I can't remember, but no, those were the days where, because in Appleton you didn't start high school till 10th grade, sophomore year, and that summer of 1978, which I believe is when this album was initially released, a lot of stuff going on. And I can going to keg parties in high school. You heard The Cars.
Oh yeah,
you heard The Cars
absolutely.
a lot.
Well, and that's really kind of the looking at our life and listening to music. This album was released and this band came out. This was their debut album. This band became very popular at a time when we were really starting to music was such a big part of your life. Your all the activities and entertainment things you're doing with friends, whether it's you're driving to school or hanging out after school, even times listening in the lunchroom, or you go down to the someone in the library, the band class has got a place where they're playing some records. Even in school you heard a lot of music, and then of course every party and at home in the evenings, a lot of music, a lot of albums. And, which ones were hot and popular, and also a lot of, check this out, someone had picked up a copy of this album, and then, let's listen to it. And, listening to a side or two of, albums when someone had made a couple purchases at Pipe Dreams or Beggar's Tune or that type of thing. Listening to new music was a big part of what was going on, as well as, whatever the regular rotation at WAPL happened to be and what they were spending a lot of time on. And they certainly spent some time on this album. And which this was the time of life when albums started to become somewhat important in what we were doing.
Well, and what was going on musically at that time? Because this was one of the first records that was really big in popularity, that was kind of new wave music.
Yeah.
And just, there was kind of like, it was bass heavy, had pop sensibility, but a little sort of rebellious streak as well. But very accessible. in a mainstream kind of way, and it kind of opened a door, to get at bands like Talking Heads, for example, or things that weren't necessarily out front for a mainstream radio listening audience. And for us, kind of WAPL was the the radio station that sort of got us in touch with music that was going on. And when this came out, I mean, and this is more I think more of a classic rock album than a like a new wave album or a post punk album, whatever you want to call it. But it sort of opened a doorway to some of those things for some people, not unlike people who you listen to Led Zeppelin and they do some of their bluesier tunes from their early albums. Well, then you listen to some Eric Clapton. When suddenly you're checking out blues music. There's things that kind of open doors to things that aren't that you're not going to necessarily be exposed to if you're just listening to a relatively conventional radio station at that time. So it was. I think that's a legitimate aspect of the Cars' first album.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree, and it was a time there was a lot that was going on with music. You'd kind of had in this like 1976, 1977 time frame where there was a couple of these just massive, now what we look at as like foundational standards of classic rock that, Hotel California, Fleetwood Mac Rumors, just things that were hugely popular, yet at the same time fit very well into that whole, groove of classic rock, and some of the things that was layered on top of things that were from a little earlier in the 70s that were also, massive classic, albums. I'm talking the Led Zeppelin, the Pink Floyd, and this kind of stuff that were already out there. And so this classic rock really kind of stabilized with some of these massive albums. And then you started to see these kind of splinterings of popularity that people were starting to listen to. And, you mentioned a couple of them. You've got the Police as well and whatever that were going into these different directions. And, you see there was some, the punk kind of haircut that some people were getting. I mean, different things were happening at the same time that, look, disco was starting to, from a popular music perspective, really get out there and what ended up kind of turning into more dance type music, the actual punk type scene, because you had that was still going on at this time. So it was an interesting time. A lot that was coming out, a lot of options for people, and the Cars just created a fun kind of music to listen to. They found kind of a sweet spot between all of these, because you're hearing some guitar and a kind of a guitar and rock foundation to these songs, but really well done use of the synthesizer as well. That was a big part of the Cars music, and we certainly hear that in this album and through the rest of them. I kind of picture it as like musical candy that they sprinkle into some of these songs. Some very short bursts of music, but mixed in with your more traditional bass lines and guitar and drums, and just some very straightforward, easy to understand vocals that were coming out, stories that were being told in these things. It really hit kind of a sweet spot that I just think still endures to this day.
I can recall hearing for the first time one of our neighbors got the album and was playing it. Might have had a cassette tape of it on a boombox type thing. To the extent that they weren't really boom boxes in those days, but in any event. And I can remember the music, it had a freshness and a sort of vitality, but it didn't really require the average rock fan to really go outside your comfort zone to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. So it was good stuff. Good. I mean, it was. I mean, whatever one thinks of the Cars in the big picture, the debut albums. I think it's an important album in late '70s rock. An important album.
Absolutely. One of those albums you really do need to listen to, because it made a statement at the time. I think a lot like there's a couple other albums that we've spoken about where the same thing occurred here. You know, the material on this debut album they'd been working with for a while. When you look at the band, I mean, the band officially formed in 1976 in Boston, but Ric Ocasek, who was kind of the let's call him the leader of the band from a frontman and creative type standpoint, really the leader of the Cars, and he'd been kicking around with bands since the late '60s, and through a number of different. He'd moved. He actually started out, I think, in the Cleveland area, and then moved to Columbus, and then he spent some time in Ann Arbor, Michigan, before he ended up settling in the Boston area and working with a couple different bands where over time he and I think Benjamin Orr is probably the number two in the band. They had kind of worked more together, and then some of these other members of the band came together in these other carnations. I think the first band that Ocasek was in that really was actually doing anything was a band called Milkwood, and they were more of like a folk rock, kind of a Crosby, Stills and Nash kind of focus of their music. Then Richard and the Rabbits, kind of in carbon, moving a little bit more to some of your pop. But then him and Benjamin Orr had an acoustic duo of acoustic guitar that they did for a little while. And then all this kind of meeting some of the other folks that would ultimately be in the band came into a band called Captain Swing, which they actually started working in that incarnation. And we're starting to bring together a couple different people of the band now. Elliot Easton and Greg Hawkes, and ultimately their drummer David Robinson, and it was that band that eventually became the Cars.
David Robinson, the drummer, he had previously played in a band called the Modern Lovers, which the head honcho in that band was a guitar player named Jonathan Richman. Mm-hmm. And the keyboard player in that band, the Modern Lovers, was Jerry Harrison, who went on to be a member of the original and the classic, the Talking Heads. Yeah. And Jonathan Richman, he was the guy that plays the guitar and sings the songs in the movie There's Something About Mary. Mm-hmm. That's Jonathan Richman. Mm-hmm. And they were kind of the bridge between like the Velvet Underground in the late '60s and then sort of new wave type, punk mm-hmm. new wave music in the mid and later '70s. So there was a lot of history to the band.
Oh, absolutely. And we've seen this before too. When you've got a group of people, especially someone with some creative talent and that type of thing, and they're able to kick around in the industry for a while. They might not be getting a lot of traction early on, but they're meeting people. They're coming in contact with these other musicians. They're coming into contact with production and engineering people, right? That can really help them, advance their music. And in this particular case, to your point, we're starting to get an interesting kind of mix of people that have played around a lot of bands. They're searching for a sound. If you look and you want to dig deep into some of the background of some of these previous bands, Ric Ocasek was really struggling to find a group of people that wanted to play the same kind of music that he had in his head. And these types of artistic and creative differences cause problems in a lot of bands, but it really made it difficult for him to kind of settle into a band where he could really sink his teeth into. And a number of these songs on the debut album he'd been working with in these previous incarnations of bands that he was going to take a swing at. And I think that's one of the reasons that this album has a lot of good songs. It was taking a look at side one and side two, and kind of went back and forth myself about which side I'd like to talk about. We're going to talk about side two today, which actually doesn't have any of the original singles that were released. The original singles, some of them ultimately came out afterwards. So wouldn't necessarily be the first choice. Some of the most popular songs came off side one, but nothing throwaway on side two either. So that's why we're gonna talk about that today. But again, this idea that they'd had this material for a while, and they'd been able to put together, even before they had a record contract, a fairly good professional demo of a lot of this material that they'd had, to the point where there was some local DJs that were actually playing from their demo on the local Boston and New England radio, which started to get them a following before they ever had a record contract. And by the time they were in a position to start searching for a contract, they actually had a couple companies that were looking to sign them, and they ended up signing with Elektra Records, mainly because Elektra didn't have any like new wave kind of area bands that they were pushing on, so the Cars would have the ability to stand out a little bit in their catalog. But they were actually in a position to be able to choose from these record companies, and a lot of that was because they had a pretty well put together demo. They were starting to get some traction on that, and finally they had the ability to work through a lot of this material in front of live audiences before it was ever actually put down and released on an album, which is another kind of trait that we've seen with a lot of bands that are really able to come out with a solid debut, because they've had that ability to work through and really get some feedback and reaction and kind of hone the material to make it really great right out of the gate.
Well, and another thing that you've mentioned a number of times, which is very true about when bands are able to kind of break through and get that successful album, is having a good producer. Mm-hmm. And they had a kind of a name producer, Roy Thomas Baker, who I believe his biggest claim to fame at that point was he had produced Queen's, a number of Queen's records. And, by that time, A Night at the Opera, The Day at the Races, that stuff had already come out at this point. And so Queen was a big band. I mean, an internationally, successful band at that time. So the record company gave, they ponied up for a decent producer for this debut album of the Cars.
Yeah, absolutely. And that also is a testament to how far along they felt the material and the band actually was. They did not say, okay, we got a contract, let's go into the studio and let's start writing some material. I mean, a lot of this stuff was really well developed. And it shows, I think, on the album itself, with the types of stuff that we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes. But, subsequent to this, they kind of went on what you see with a lot of, fairly successful bands about, got onto the treadmill of once a year, putting out another album. After this debut album, again, this came out in 1978 and 1979, the album Candy-O was released. It had some singles on it that did very well, like Let's Go and It's All I Can Do. Then another year, 1980, Panorama comes out. Not considered as good as the first two albums, but it had some songs on it. Touch and Go was a song that came from this album. And they had a little more success in 1981 when they followed up with Shake It Up. And that had songs like Since You've Gone and Shake It Up on it, which continued to be just big hits for the band. And they did pretty well. And they took a little bit of a break and then came back in 1984 with Heartbreak City, which had You Might Think, Magic, and Drive on it. All very big hits at the time. And at this point in 1985, they were able to release a Greatest Hits album, which was packed with a lot of good hits from these albums. And that really was kind of, when you look at the successful release of the band, was really kind of the end point there. They released some other material after that. Nothing really hit that point. And the bands were starting to work on some individual material. And, ultimately by 2000, Ben Orr died. And then it was in 2019, Ric Ocasek died. So, really the key members of the band are no longer with us, but they sold a lot of albums, very commercially successful, very critically successful with their albums. And in 2018, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which was a year before Rick died. So, a number of successful albums, a number of successful hits, and it really all started with this debut.
All right. Well, tell us more about side two.
Sounds good. Side two. Okay. And again, some very good songs on side one. Side one's an excellent side, starts right out with, Let the Good Times Roll, which is really just a classic kind of anthem of from the Cars. But you go ahead and listen to side one, but then flip it over and you've got side two. 4 songs on this side, right? Not hugely packed with a large number of songs, but 4 pretty good songs. And let's take a quick look at the album itself. This is an iconic album cover. Just very simple, very straightforward, but very memorable. And the smile and the joy, exhilaration, and excitement just really kind of stands out, and really just one of those album covers that, it's just an iconic album cover for the debut. Picture of the members of the band in the back with some interesting effects on there, but really just kind of an interesting band. And then I think we've got some, if you take on the sleeve inside, you've got some photos of the band, and as well as some lyrics from the different song and some pictures of the band members. So interesting and memorable cover, and one that just anybody that sees that big smile and it everybody knows where that came from.
Well, that the steering wheel that the woman is, she's driving a car. That steering wheel has a kind of a 50s sort of look to it. Mm-hmm. And the model,
yeah,
so there's this kind of 50s sort of driving around, cruising around music, but the way that the woman is made up and the position she's in, it's like the cover of a Roxy Music album.
Yes,
sort of a glam kind of thing. And so it was a unique combination of things that it sort of evoked. And I agree with you. Very striking, iconic cover.
And it also, along with the name, the Cars, the kind of a callback to some of these bands from the 50s, from the earlier days of rock and roll, the steering wheel and the type of vehicle that she was in as well. It really was kind of we're not trying to make things futuristic here, right? It's almost like, yes, we've got synthesizers and that type of thing, but we are an old-fashioned rock and roll band. Was, I'm sure, part of the branding and imaging that's here. And this is what people were listening to at before they headed into the hop, right? Or that type of thing in the early days of rock and roll. Again, even the name, the Cars. I mean, just a simple, straightforward type thing. So
let the music do the talking.
Exactly. So so we start out side two, and it's a song, "You're All I've Got Tonight." And I just want to start. We're gonna listen to the beginning of this song, and then we'll talk about it. But just listen to this starts out with some drums, some toms that just kind of get us started into the side, and listen to how that gets started, and then leads into the song itself, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so you hear that starts the side out, right? Kind of gets us going very quickly, right, into the song. I mean, the song itself, I heard some descriptions of how Ric Ocasek would write songs, and And one of the members of the band, I can't remember specifically, but it was just like, yeah, Rick would just take a saying. Someone would make like a saying, "You're all I've got tonight," or "Let the good times roll," or whatever, and he could take that saying and turn it into a song. So it's not necessarily starting with a deep thought or emotion and then trying to build out and think of a way to say it. It's really the other way around. This a saying or a slogan can create its own emotion, and let's build a song back from that, right? Which I think is an interesting way of songwriting. It sounds like Ric Ocasek had a real ability to do it. And there's, I've kind of read a number of different interpretations about what this could be meaning, but "You're All I've Got Tonight" is fairly straightforward. This is like, look, maybe, there's some reasons why I may not want to be with you, but you are all I've got tonight. Kind of a "you'll do for now" kind of philosophy that. A lot of reasons why this might happen. People might find this situation at closing time in a bar. People might find themselves in a relationship they've been in for a long time. And, maybe there's problems or difficulties with it, but at the end of the night, these are all each other have. And I get more of that. If you look at the lyrics of the song, there's a lot of things that, like, they have a history. Right, this whoever he's speaking to has some type of history. You can knock me and I don't care. You can mock me and I don't care. You could rock me just about anywhere. It's all right. This sounds like this person is used to some of the abuse or toxicity that they're speaking of.
Or it could be more of the I used her, she used me, but neither one cared. We were getting our share.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, that's sort
exactly.
of that's what I mean, because it's not a. There's some negativity. If you hurt me some more, I don't care if you use me again. I mean, there's some fairly accusatory lyrics, but on the other side of the coin, it's like, hey, beats the alternative.
And exactly, and it's also there's several times "I need you tonight." It is. This is not like I guess. Or whatever. I mean, there's absolutely a
the
need.
Singer has need. It's the singer's need. It's not like, oh, I guess I'll go through the motions.
Yes,
for you. No.
Yeah,
the singer is the one who needs.
Yes, and so, like I say, there's a lot of different situations that people could potentially find themselves in where, look, you're all I've got tonight, and. From that point, it's important that we keep this going, and that at least for tonight we stay together. And I think they do this is an example. I talked a little bit earlier about this whole notion of some of the noise candy that they do a good job of sprinkling in. You've got you start out with these drums, this kind of that gets us going, and then some guitar. Kicks in and then the vocals, which are always very straightforward and powerful. It's, I don't care. Yeah, they're not easing you into the situation. It starts right away with some emotion and feeling, and then there's like guitars that kind of are interrupting the words and the flow. Da 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 da. They kind of leap in. And they do that not just with the guitars, but different synthesizer effects. But it doesn't come off as random and sloppy. It comes off as really well coordinated and flows. And there's a number of, almost all of the Cars songs. They've got a couple ballads that are out there, but they really get into a groove. And sometimes it takes to get through that first verse and chorus, and then they slide back in, and then everything's working. You got really just beaten drums, a heavy bass line, some guitar that's going, some synthesizer, and some vocals that are rocking, and that's what you feel in this song as well. So it's just kind of a neat song.
Well, and the guitar, it's some fairly aggressive guitar, but it's not the sort of thing that you'd label, heavy metal or hard rock, really. And so there's a I don't polish isn't the right word, but there's just there's a smoothness that sort of takes some of the edge off, but that aggressiveness is still there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good. It's a very effective guitar sound.
Yes, and it comes what it results in is like some very short guitar solos that make their way through all of these songs. And in some cases it's just a note or two that they at the shortest point, it's like there's a part in the song where they're going, I need you, bow wow wow, and it's very pronounced. It's not just some guitar that's in the background or an effect. I mean, it is meant to almost be another vocal effect that comes in there. And then they're tonight, I need you, bow wow, tonight. And working between the vocals and especially the guitar, but also some synthesizers from time to time, they do a great job of moving those together. So it feels like a constant flow. Very up tempo, just always kind of those drums from the beginning. Although obviously they fade out in the more traditional kind of drums, bass, and guitar and synthesizer roll in. There's still that feeling of kind of pumping along throughout the entire song. So this song is not going to put you to sleep, and I think it's a great way to start the side.
I agree, and it doesn't. You've already mentioned "Let the Good Times Roll," which is just such a perfect album opener. But this gets the proceedings going for the second side very well. I mean, it's a strong cut, and as you say, straightforward, no bullshit message that resonates.
Exactly, and it really rolls. This 4 songs on this side, and you can almost look at the first 2 as a pairing, and the second 2 as a pairing. In fact, both these sets of songs will sometimes be played together on the radio. The kind of, you see this where songs just kind of flow into the other, and you kind of get in a habit over time of listening to both these 2, especially the second 2. You often hear the second 2 on the side, but these as well, mainly because the song ends and you move just immediately into song 2, which is a song called Bye Bye Love. So I actually want to play that transition as we come to the end of You're All I've Got Tonight, and then how quickly it rolls into Bye Bye Love, and then we'll come back on the other side.
Sounds good.
You're all I've got tonight. You're all I've got tonight. You're all I've got tonight. I need you tonight. I need you tonight. I need you tonight.
So we hear that we're coming down from You're All I've Got Tonight, and then it bounces right into Bye Bye Love, and this guitar catches you right away. I mean, it's like do 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 do, and then they kind of use this back and forth effect. It starts with the guitar, where they move into this kind of guitar riff, and then it's countered by a keyboard type effect that kind of brings it down. So you get this back and forth. You get kind of a punching guitar, and then it steps you back to this do 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 do. And the same thing happens after the opening, and you move into the vocals. and the vocals then take that place of the lead guitar, but that kind of slowing you down, lowering the feeling down of it with this keyboard continues through the song. And what we heard there through the first verse of the song. And this one is really listening to this song again, very upbeat type song, but there's definitely some the feeling of that kind of slowdown in the keyboard, of the tempo, was a little bit of the kind of the melancholy that can come with just, again, what is this song talking about? Bye bye love. This is, I don't think that this is so much of a love that's been lost type story, is an elusive love. Someone who, gets to the, that point in the evening, and the one that he loves is always with some other guy, or, never quite able to capture that, as opposed to, if you can picture, the notion of bye bye love, watching the love of your life walk away from you down the street again. I've always, pictured this a little bit more with that elusive love that you've wanted, but haven't been able to capture.
Well, and I think that's a pretty straightforward assessment of what the song is about. And it's, there's a certain frustration as opposed to anger in the lyrics. That's sort of like, look, I've had enough of this, without, it's not humorless anger. It's more of a sort of, hey, I can see the forest for the trees, a sort of frustration. And the song it's there. Some of the bass playing in this song is kind of aggressive. There's some little transitions in there where they fill in with some fairly thumpy bass.
Yes.
That is not unlike like some of the English new wave bands that had this very aggressive, like Gang of Four, for example, very different sound than the Cars, but a kind of an aggressive bass. And this song, perhaps more so than any of the others on the whole album, the whole Cars album, has that sort of aggressive new wavy bass sound.
Well, and I think we'll hear that. I want to play another clip from the song, and to your point about frustration, how frustration comes through in this song. This is they basically repeat the words from a previous verse, but it's really amped up. And listen to the singing here as we're kind of talking about substitution, mass confusion, this type of thing that is being experienced by the singer, and how this leads us to the kind of the conclusion of the song. So let's listen.
Substitution, mass confusion, comes inside your head. Well, fire all my energies until your wheels are dead. With your eyes porcelain and a blue, they shock me innocence. You think it's so illustrious, you call yourself intense. It's the orangey sky. Always it's some other guy. It's just a broken lullaby. Bye, bye love. Bye, bye love. Bye, bye love. Bye, bye love.
So again, a great example of a song. You listen to this, and I mean, there's we talked about the bass is, but there's a lot else that's going on this song. Again, a lot of this, musical candy is the only way that I can do it. There's and it's not just a lot of sound effects. These are thoughtful musical pieces that are placed in. There's a lot of them and they're relatively short, but they flow really well together. It's not like someone's just putting a bunch of random sound effects into a song, but there's a lot that's going on. A great example of some music that is entertaining to listen to with the headphones on, and you can focus on all the little things that are happen around you while you're playing it.
Well, there's no question that the singer is more frustrated when he sings that second time around
Yes.
with substitution, mass confusion, clouds inside your head.
Yeah.
So I can't take much more of this shit, you know.
Exactly. Well, and it's kind of, I think it's a lot about the Cars that, you know, it's like let's amp this up a little bit, right? Not necessarily we don't need to turn the volume to 11, but let's just let's get this moving a little more, right? The type of music, you hear that in a lot. This is it's the tempo is upbeat, the songs are moving. They're from a wide variety of things, but it's like, yeah, let's keep this amped up. Let's keep people paying attention. Let's keep this moving. And you're right. I chose that part for a minute because there's plenty of emotion when this guy's what this guy's got going on inside of his head.
Well, and you know, there's a difference between a flat performance and an energetic performance.
Yes.
You know, it's not necessarily the material or the volume. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a difference between a flat performance of the same material and as an energetic performance of the same material.
Yes.
And when you can kind of take what's already a fairly energetic performance and then amp it up a little farther, people can tell, and it changes how the material affects the listener. Mm-hmm. Even if it's the exact same song, exact same arrangement played by the exact same band, there's a difference between a flat performance and an energetic performance, and there's a difference between an energetic performance and a really energetic performance.
Yep. Well, I mean, I never had the opportunity to see the Cars during around this time. I did, and you were there, weren't you? When we saw the new Cars
with Todd Rundgren, and as he took the Rick Ocasek role. Yeah, I was there.
Exactly. And I mean, that was an energetic concert. And it's part of having just straightforward music. You know, when you're at a live concert experience, one of the things that makes it great is if people can sing along and can understand what the heck the band is doing, because then it becomes a shared experience for everyone, and that was certainly the case with this music. They did a good job of playing the music through, and Todd Rundgren did a great job with the vocals, but the music itself just keeps moving, and when you want people in the crowd to be be jumping up and down and singing along, this music lends itself very good. And that was a great concert experience. I felt in watching that. So from there, the third song, now this actually, as far as like energy and dancing type feeling, this is probably the least of anything on the side. It's also, though, it's my favorite Cars song. It's called Moving in Stereo. It's a little different from these other songs in the way that it doesn't have as much different type of activity to keep it rolling. It's kind of a deeper, darker kind of sound to it that we're going to be hearing. It's got just a very straightforward and really just completely repeated type riff, which is actually synthesizer, that we're going to hear throughout the entire song, and then they layer in a really strong kind of bass line underneath it. The song starts out very quietly, but as it moves in, there's this kind of frequency adjustment modulation going on as you're getting kind of this kind of a weird otherworldly type type feel as the song comes in, and then it starts with some some guitar and some of the synthesizer and the bass that comes in. So let's hear as this gets started, right? This riff that we're going to kind of hear through the song and some of the first verse, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Life's the same, I'm moving in stereo. Life's the same, except for my shoes. Life's the same, you're shaking like tremolo. Life's the same, it's all inside you. It's so easy to blow up your problems. It's so easy to play up your breakdown. It's so easy to fly through a window. It's so easy to move with the sound.
Okay, so you're already starting with more of a. This is just a deeper, kind of slower march than we've heard on the first two tracks. But it's also pretty intense. The way it kind of catches you. The song itself, moving in stereo. I never thought too much about this song at all. To me, it was always about being high. That life is just different, right? There's not necessarily more life. You're just perceiving it differently. Much like you can listen to a song on a handheld AM transistor radio, and then you can listen to a song through a good stereo with headphones on. Same song, very different perception that you're hearing. And when you're moving in stereo, when you're living life in stereo, that is always what it meant for me from the very first time that I heard this song until to this day. Now, you can do a little bit deeper inspection of these lyrics and find maybe a different, some different ideas, but that's what it was to me.
Well, I think that, I mean, because let's face it, the late 70s, a lot of people were smoking pot and listening to rock music. I mean, that was just something that was going on. And I would say that this is the only song on the entire album that you can really say might be kind of a stoner tune, just with the way that the sound and the music comes in, and when you hear this song and other than that concert that you talked about with Todd Rundgren, I never saw the Cars when they were in their heyday. But you can imagine that when they performed back then, when they had some of their first big concert tours, when moving in stereo would start, you're just up on stage, or the keyboard player would be doing his thing, and then this and that, and almost like someone would be like moonwalking. Yeah. And not that this is anything like Michael Jackson or anything, but just it had this otherworldly air about it that sort of fit neatly into the stoner way of looking at things in terms of music.
Yes. And I've read some reviews and feedback of this song that can talk about disconnection from reality. In other words, what you're hearing or thinking inside is different than what's going on. About anxiety or mental illness. That can go on, or denial of things. I mean, you can dig into a lot of these things. I just think that the idea of there's some things that are going on that may not be what they seem, or I'm seeing what actually is, and it's brilliant or whatever. But this idea of, look, mono, good music, stereo, great music, right? I just, I'm moving in stereo. And if I think I've used that term in my life when someone's like, how you doing? It's like, I'm moving in stereo. Yeah, things are good. Now there are some things when you really, kind of look at it, it's like, where are they going with this? I mean, it's so easy to fly through a window, and it's that can just be kind of the experience that you may be on. There's some people that have talked about, is this, kind of a suicide type thing that they're talking about. I don't get that deep into it. I focus a lot on that riff that is very central to the song.
Well, and the fly through a window, the person's high on LSD and they think they can fly and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly that, but I don't know this song. While there's definitely, it alludes to the darker side of things. I mean, just the tone of the song it's not the brightest song on the record, but it's not a caustic. What's the right word? Denouncement of. It's not something that's like you guys, you young rock and rollers shouldn't be getting high so much, and you've got to watch yourself, and that's not what it's about. But it does kind of allude, it's so easy, it's tough to get up. It's so easy to fool with the sound. Yeah. So there's a certain cautionary aspect to things, but and whether it's talking about getting high or feeling sorry for yourself or being lazy or whatever it might be, there's all sorts of different things that it could be talking about. Whereas moving in stereo is the way it's supposed to be, as opposed to just the way you feel when you're trying to get away from it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, now I don't want to get too, because I don't know if that sort of ambiguity is necessarily in the lyrics, but in any case, it's not a downer.
No,
it's not.
No.
I mean, it's kind of it's cool. Despite the cautionary aspect of some of the lyrics.
And it really is, in the end, though, it's the music and this sound that dominates this song more so than any messaging of the lyrics. Although I think that the lyrics fit in very well with how the song ends up rolling out. I'm going to play another clip from this, and it'll be more towards the end when we're ramping up and we're really hearing this riff get much stronger bass underneath it, and add a little power into it, and how the song really starts to kind of reach its climax with this this sound. So let's listen to that and then pick up the end on the other side. Okay, so that really kind of built up, and and then as we get to the end of the song, it actually starts to kind of prepare itself to transition to the next and final song of the side in the album. But I mean, I just think I again, as I'd said before, this is really my favorite Cars song of all their material, let alone on this particular album. And I enjoy the Cars. There's just something a little bit different and just has always struck me as a little more powerful about this particular song than a lot of the other stuff. And I think they've got a lot of good songs.
Well, and it's, I mean, just to go back to something you've already said, it's about all of the songs to some extent, and to this, and about this song in particular, is that it doesn't, I mean, you can make it seem deeper than it is, but it's just a fairly simple idea. You listen to music, and most people that listen to music, from our era and forward, it's usually in stereo. You don't have a lot of mono. Yeah. And it's like I'm moving in stereo, like the girl on the roller skates in Dire Straits' Skate Away,
Yeah.
No fears alone at night. She's sailing through the crowd, and the phones are tight and the music's playing loud. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. So and with a very straightforward kind of message here, it is the music that carries the day, and I just think it's an interesting, unique song that I've always liked to listen to from back in the late 70s to this day. So we transition, and as I said before, these two songs, Moving in Stereo and the final song on the side and on the album, all mixed up. These two songs are often played together, right? Rolls with one. And as I said, you kind of start to feel a transition at the end of Moving in Stereo that they're getting ready to set something else up. So the fourth song is called All Mixed Up. As we're going to see, as we've talked about on a number of these songs, fairly straightforward. This guy is talking about relationships, and in this particular case, he's talking about from a number of different aspects about a woman, and he finds that this relationship and his feelings and his interactions with this woman are all mixed up, and you kind of hear a little. Yeah, exactly.
Go figure.
It's, clearly Ric Ocasek has experienced what most of us have in trying to figure out the fairer sex, that, it doesn't always work. Like, they don't always think like we do. And so, the feelings and some of the emotions, and they do a good job. If that's going to be the theme, the way that the lyrics roll out, there is that feeling of like, it's all mixed up. I can't understand why, but it's mixed up again, and it seems like it's gonna stay mixed up. And they do a very good job of bringing that out, that feeling out, with the way that they're singing the song. So you get into this song, and actually, what again, it's pretty straightforward. But the song kind of transitions as we get out of the beginning of the song and into kind of the second act of the song, let's call it, where instead of focusing on all these different things that are mixed up and confusing to the singer, there's more of an optimistic thing about the chorus of really that everything's going to be all right, and that she says, "Leave it to me. Everything's going to be all right." So that's the reassuring part of the relationship seems to come from this woman that he sees as all mixed up, yet somehow it works, and that things are going to be all right. So it switches to a little bit more like, yeah, this is maybe the way that it's supposed to be, and a little bit more optimistic tone before we kind of fade out of the lyrics and into what is really kind of the climax of the song, and really the album.
She said
Okay, so you hear there, we're getting into the what is the climax of this song, the side, and the album, and really a lot going on there, including, which you don't hear in a lot of Cars music, was a saxophone solo that comes in towards the end, which is really unique in a lot of their music. But it's very clear, although this song was not out there as a big single. Certainly, if you ask people what are the best songs on this album, nobody's going to come say All Mixed Up first. There's some great big hits that are on this album that tend to come in mind first. But I think it was very intentional that they ended the side and the album with this particular song and that particular climax to the song. That it really built up and was a way to kind of put an exclamation point on the end of the album. Just a lot going on there, and just kind of a closeout. It kind of seemed to get away from the theme and feeling of the song, and really just draw kind of to what you'd expect to see kind of at the end of a concert, where everybody's getting in and jamming, and we're waiting for that last kind of thump, and it had a little bit of a feel to that based on how it was built up, and not just the end of this song, but the end of the album for people that were listening to it.
And I agree that the sort of the it's all mixed up parts of the song have more of that new wavy sort of feel to them, whereas at the end, she says to leave it to me, everything will be all right. It's a different tone, just a whole different feel to the song. Those parts of the song, in my opinion, just have a whole different feel. And I tend to, while on the one hand that seems, everything will be all right, just leave it to me, has some hopefulness to it, some, kind of a little light coming through a break in the clouds, or however you want to look at it. But I also tend to think, he's the singer is sort of, she's always out making pictures, always making scenes. She's always out the window, this and that. And she tricks me into thinking, I can't believe my eyes. I wait for her forever, but she never does arrive. Those are, so that's what this guy is getting from her. And what she's telling him is, just leave it to me. Things will be all right.
Yeah.
But that's sort of like, well, leave it to you. Well, I know what I'm going to get from you.
Yeah.
Because this is what I've been getting. And so I think that there's the way I interpret the lyrics is he's sort of like, here's who I am. You don't like it? Take it or leave it. You know?
Well, and this was from Rick Ocasek, who ended up, kind of marrying a couple model type women in his life. Maybe he was drawn to these women that were getting their pictures taken and that type of thing. I agree with you, Mike. In fact, the song actually kind of sounds like that. They do a very good job. You've got the lead vocals that are talking, everything will be all right. But then there's a kind of a chorus of all the other singers that are like, leave it to me. It's kind of pulling back and forth a little bit between the lead vocals, and then the backing vocals seem to be tugging in different directions almost. So, just kind of an interesting way of pushing that forward. But the bottom line is it ends up in, this kind of, climax to the song and the album. And I mean, which just, it works well. From an album that had just a lot of foot tapping, hand clapping, straightforward rock and roll. We have, the second side here with these 4 songs that just work well together to put, a great side of music together.
Definitely. I mean, it is a good side, and it's a good album. And I agree with you on the front end. You talked about how both, which side is the better side to pick for this podcast, and I think they're both worthy. But this
seems to tell me side one will make an appearance on some future podcast here.
I have a funny feeling that is true. But this is a relatively dramatic, just the sound of that, leave it to me, be all right. It's a fairly dramatic ending. And sort of it doesn't go out with a whimper.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. From a song from a band and an album that didn't have a whole lot of whimpers in it, period. This is a good album. People should give the whole thing a listen, but side two is I think well constructed as a side, as your 20 or so minutes of music to listen to. So everybody should give the whole album a listen to, but side two, a great side from a great debut album from what would go on to become a great band.
Well said.
All right, well, good conversation, Mike, and
all right.
We'll get the next one teed up.
Sounds good. We will talk to you next time.